Hello and welcome to BYJU'S Exam Prep IAS. A very warm good morning to everyone. I hope all of you are doing absolutely fine. I welcome you all to today's session of the Hindu Newspaper Analysis. Before we take a deep dive into all the important articles from the Hindu newspaper today, just a very quick reminder about a new scholarship test that is coming up. The National Scholarship Test, especially for those who are planning to appear for the 2024 examination, will be held on the 5th of November at 11 a.m. Doing well in this scholarship test gives you a chance to get up to 90% scholarship on all our courses. You can give this test online and offline as well. All that you have to do is make sure that you click on the link given in the description of the video, register for this test, and you will be eligible to appear here. Also, please make sure that you give this with your complete preparation so that you can also see how much are you scoring as compared to the other students who are appearing for this test. These are the topics that we have taken up from today's discussion. First, we will be discussing about an article which is written with respect to the reproductive choices for women. This is obviously with respect to a recent Supreme Court judgment where the court did not allow 26-week pregnant women to undergo abortion. The second article is about how the rise of AI, that is artificial intelligence, may be a problem with the copyright law in India and around the world. Third article is about the U.S Israel relationship. Why is it that the U.S always backs Israel no matter what? Why is it that the U.S keeps on using their veto power, their economic and their military might to protect Israel as much as possible? Then from the prelims examination point of view, a few important news stories. First, the UPSC has tightened the rules for the appointment of the state police chief, that is the DGP. We'll be discussing what that is, how the DGP is appointed in India, what is the role of the UPSC. Then there is a new rise in a different type of a coffee called mushroom coffee. A coffee powder which is made up of powdered mushroom in certain quantities, becoming more and more famous in Kerala. We'll be discussing what that is, how is it different from the usual coffee that you consume. Then the WHO regional post has just been closed. As you know, the competition was between a candidate from Nepal and Bangladesh. Bangladesh's candidate, who is a daughter of the Bangladesh Prime Minister, has won this election. Then Kozhikode and Gwalior have been given a space in the UN Creative Cities list. We'll be discussing what that is, how does this Creative Cities list work, what are the parameters using which the cities get listed here. Then the British Academy Book Prize of 2023 was given to Indian-born author Nandini Das. And in the end, the UK is holding the AI Summit. They have just ensured that there's a first global declaration where multiple countries have come together to sign on the question of AI, what regulations to make for AI going forward. These are the topics that we'll be discussing. So let's begin with the first one. The first article is on a topic that we have discussed multiple times in the past couple of weeks, ever since it has happened. There have been multiple editorials written on this topic. For those who don't know, the background of the topic is there was a 26-week pregnant woman who went to the Supreme Court saying that she should be given the right or she should be allowed to have abortion. Now the law in India, that is the Medical Termination of Pregnancy Act, allows abortion up to 24 weeks. Beyond that, for the abortion to be carried out, it is only on the reasons of abnormality in the fetus or any extreme danger to the life of the mother. Both of these conditions were not satisfied in this case. It is why the Supreme Court did not allow the abortion to go ahead. Now, this is the background info. I'm sure all of you have read this multiple times. The question is, why is it this article written? The author here, who himself is an advocate in the Madras High Court, has criticized the Supreme Court on a couple of things. He says that the Supreme Court, while deciding the matter, has made two mistakes and rather have not given answers to two important questions here. He says that there is no clarity on how is it that the Supreme Court has decided that the right of a fetus is more important than right of the women. If the right of the women is to decide what happens with her body, shouldn't she get a preference over the right of a fetus? How does the fetus decide that the fetus, its life becomes more precious than the choice taken by the mother? These are some of the questions as per the author which the Supreme Court has not answered. The problem of women right versus having fetus with full rights has not been answered properly. If you look at India's constitution, our constitution talks about fundamental rights, our constitution talks about other types of rights, but in none of the rights, the constitution mentions anything about the right of a fetus. Basically, what does the Supreme Court say? The Supreme Court says that as per scientific studies, once the fetus is 24 weeks old, the fetus becomes viable and is actually medically capable of surviving outside the mother's uterus as well. That is how the 24-week time period has been taken. That after 24 weeks, if it is necessary, the doctors can even take out the fetus after 24 weeks and they can still make sure that it grows into a baby outside the mother's uterus. So in simple terms, as for the Supreme Court, after 24 weeks, it is an independent life of its own. Before 24 weeks, it was dependent on the mother, so mother has the right to take the final call. But after 24 weeks, it is an individual life, and that is why the decision to kill that life cannot be taken by the mother. This is the entire argument. You can stretch it even further. Let's say there are parents who have a newborn kid and they are not happy with the kid for some reason, and they kill the kid or they give away the kid. Let's take an example of female infanticide, where a lot of female child are killed when they take birth. That doesn't mean that the parents can go unpunished. Even though you might say it is a parent's child, but no, they don't have the right to take the decision about the life of another individual. This is what the Supreme Court argued in this case as well. After 24 weeks, it is an individual life where the government, where the individual, the mother cannot take decision about whether the child would be allowed to live or not. Now, the author here points out towards two main errors in the judgment. First, does a fetus enjoy autonomous moral status? Means, does a fetus enjoy the rights given in the Constitution or not? There is no specific mention of this. The Constitution of India does not say that fetus or unborn child will also have the same rights. Second question, or the second mistake that the author sees in the judgment of the Supreme Court is the Medical Termination of Pregnancy Act. Now, the Medical Termination of Pregnancy Act, as you know, it talks about whether or not and under what circumstances can abortion be allowed. It says that up till 20 weeks abortion can be allowed with the permission of one registered medical practitioner. Within 24 weeks it can be allowed with the permission of two registered medical practitioner. After 24 weeks, it's to be decided by the judiciary only in certain cases, fetal abnormality or danger to the life. However, the author here says that the status of this law is not equal to fundamental rights. The fundamental right, that is the right to choice, the right to life, the right to personal liberty, is much, much more important. Means, if the court had to decide which one has to be given preference, the preference has to be given to the mother's right, or the preference has to be given to this law, that is a Medical Termination of Pregnancy Act. The court erred in the judgment by giving a preference to the Medical Termination of Pregnancy Act. It says, or the author says rather, the Medical Termination of Pregnancy Act is just a law to make sure that there is a certain framework for carrying out abortion. It cannot be the only law that guides the Supreme Court in making such judgments. These are the two errors that the author points towards. Now, let me give you a personal opinion here for a minute. The opinion here is, if, for example, you take the argument that is given by the author. The author's argument is, number one, how is it that you decide that the fetus right is more important than the mother? And the second argument that the author here gives is that Medical Termination of Pregnancy Act should not take precedence over any other right that the mother has. The problem here is, if you accept these two arguments, then there will be no limit, absolutely no limit on till how much time period can you carry abortion. For example, if let's say there is a mother who wants to get aborted in 35 weeks. Even then, if you agree to these arguments, means even then you will have to say yes. I'm not saying it should be in this manner or it should not be in this manner, but these arguments will be applicable even when there is a mother, even when there is a woman who demands abortion after 30 weeks, after 35 weeks as well, because this argument that is given here by the author is just on the basis of the fact that number one, the women's right or the mother's right should get preference over the fetus rights, and secondly, the Medical Termination of Pregnancy Act should not be taken as the only sole criteria for deciding such cases. The author also says that the Supreme Court itself seems to be contradictory or contradicting to what they had said earlier. Just last year in 2022, Justice Chandrachud, who is the Chief Justice of India, had said that Article 21 of the Constitution recognizes and protects the right of a woman to undergo termination of pregnancy if her mental or physical health is at stake. Now, see, the important word here is mental health is at stake. Why is this an important word? Because in this particular case, where the Supreme Court had denied the permission to get abortion to this lady, the lady gave two arguments. The argument that are given by lady were, number one, she said that I am suffering from depression. Ever since my second child was born, I am suffering from postpartum depression. Now, one argument is that why is it that the lady waited for such a long time period? If the lady had to abort the kid, she should have come to the court earlier. She should have done this earlier. The argument here is the lady is suffering from a medical condition wherein she does not have her periods. This is the biggest indication that you get that you're pregnant when you're not menstruating. The lady is suffering from a condition where she is not menstruating, and that is why she could not get to know that she actually is pregnant. It was only around 20-21 weeks when she had a scan, and then she came to know that she has another child. So, number one, her argument was that she is suffering from depression, so she can't take care of another child. Number two, her argument was financial, that her husband is the only earning member in the household, they cannot afford to have one more child. Let's forget about the second argument for a bit. But the first argument is the same as Justice Chandrachud had given just last year when he said that the pregnancy can be aborted if mental or physical health is at stake. This is the argument that the author here is giving, that the Supreme Court seems to be contradicting what it had said just in the last year. Justice Chandrachud had said that women alone who has the right over her body, it is her ultimate decision on the question of whether she wants to undergo an abortion or not. All these indicate towards the fact that as per the author, the Supreme Court has mistaken in this judgment by contradicting to what they had said earlier and by not addressing important questions. The question of what is the right of a fetus has not been specifically defined in the Constitution. Look at article number 14, which talks about right to equality. Look at article number 21, which talks about right to life and personal liberty. None of these have been conferred specifically on the fetus. They have been conferred on the parents who are living individuals. And that is why the author says that there is a need to correct this judgment because it will not set a good precedent going forward. Now, in this entire debate, there are a lot of aspects, many of them we have discussed earlier as well. For example, first angle is of pro-choice versus pro-life. Now, in India, we usually don't have this debate. In India, our abortion laws mostly have been liberal. Our abortion laws mostly have been about giving the right to women until a certain time period when the fetus is considered to be an individual life of its own. Pro-life versus pro-choice arguments are usually that we see in developed countries such as the U.S. The U.S. anyways in the last couple of years has had this big debate. Pro-life means those people who are against abortion, who want that the life of the child should not be dependent on the decision that the parents have taken. Pro-choice means that it is the choice of the mother whether she wants to have the kid or not. Now, there are certain other data pointers that you need to understand to answer these kind of questions importantly. Let's assume a certain situation. Let's say there is a lady or there are parents who want to get abortion, but the court did not allow them. Now, what will be their next step? The next step ideally would be that no, they will not undergo abortion. But what happens in practical cases is when you are not allowed something, you're not allowed to undergo an abortion, but you still want an abortion, then you will try and find illegal ways to do that. You will try and do that without coming into the light of the authorities. This gives a problem, or this gives birth to the problem of unsafe abortions. Because people want to do it in a hidden manner. Take an example of, let's say, the government of Bihar banning alcohol. Has it led to alcohol not being sold in Bihar? No. Rather, what has happened in Bihar is a lot of illegal, a lot of unsafe alcohol is being sold, leading to a lot of deaths. Same is the case. If you don't allow these abortions, and if the person really wants to have it, it would result in a situation of unsafe abortions, which leads to maternal deaths. In India, 45,000 maternal deaths occur every year. On an average, one maternal death occurs every 12 minutes. Second data point that you have to understand, this is from the Lancet report. Only 22% abortions in India are done through public or private health facilities. Means other abortions are done through other methods, either at home, by taking someone else's help who is not a medical practitioner. That endangers the life of the mother, that obviously endangers the life of people who are involved in this process. That is why, rather than the government or the judiciary deciding that yes, you can have abortion, you cannot have abortion, the suggestion is there should be a better process of counseling, there should be a better alternate mechanism that should be put into place. There are other countries around the world that have different types of laws about abortion. For example, many European countries like France, UK, Italy, they allow abortion after 20 weeks if fetal abnormalities are discovered. In India also, we have a similar kind of a thing after how the MPT Act, that is the Medical Termination of Pregnancy Act, was amended recently in 2021. There are many other countries like Canada, Germany, Vietnam that allow abortion at any time if request is based on social or medical reasons. So there are countries who have not put a time limit on abortion. You can abort a child at any point of time in some nations, just that the reason has to be based on some social or medical condition. This was our first article. The second article here is about the question of AI, that is artificial intelligence, and how artificial intelligence is now coming in the way of copyright laws. Now, I am sure most of you would have used the ChatGPT. ChatGPT is the new AI platform where you can ask questions, you can basically get a lot of information from the ChatGPT. People are using it to write answers as well, using it to write essays, and all the other applications of ChatGPT have now been seen in our day-to-day life. The problem here is, as per the author, ChatGPT, how does it learn all that information? It learns all the information by obviously reading a lot. For example, if you ask a ChatGPT any simple question, it can be a factual question. Factual question can be, for example, what is the largest animal on earth? What is the highest mountain, etc. These kind of factual questions. Or you may also ask questions to ChatGPT. For example, ask ChatGPT, tell me a good joke, or tell me a good WhatsApp status, or whatever. The ChatGPT would respond to the best of its capabilities. Now, how does it learn what to respond as an answer to the questions? Because it reads. Now, when it is reading from books, it is giving you data from that book. That means it may be copying that information from somewhere. This now comes in the way of the copyright laws. Copyright laws means that if someone has created something with their own intelligence, be it writing a book or something else, it would be copyrighted. It cannot be copied. But in case of ChatGPT and these kind of other artificial intelligence platforms, this becomes a problem. Now, nations around the world are suffering from this issue, especially the authors, etc., who have written books, who expect to earn money, royalty from those books. They are also up in arms against the capabilities of artificial intelligence to steal all that data, to steal all that information. Many countries are trying to make regulations regarding this. The U.S. government recently passed an executive order on safe, secure, and trustworthy artificial intelligence, talking about what the artificial intelligence is allowed to do and what are they not allowed to do. There are a few examples of the problem that ChatGPT and these kind of platforms have now taken or have now brought to the forefront. For example, in the US recently, there was a case in which there was a person who had developed an AI platform. Now, this AI platform had developed an art. This person wanted to make sure that this art is copyrighted. The person went to the copyright authority saying that I want to copyright the art made by my AI platform. This permission was denied. This case went to a US district court. A US district court said that any art made by just AI which lacks any human touch will not be given any copyright. The court said that human creativity is essential to give copyrights to any creation whatsoever. This is a judgment by a US district court. Now, obviously, this judgment does not apply to India. However, this is an example of how the problems regarding AI and copyright laws are becoming a reality, and we should be ready for this going forward. In India also, there have been certain cases. For example, in the year 2020, the Indian Copyright House or Office got a request to register an artwork called Suryast. When the Copyright Office asked who is the creator of this, there was an AI system called Raghav Artificial Intelligence Painting App that was registered as a co-author. Means there was a person who made the portal, that person along with the AI platform. These two were listed as the authors of this artwork, that is Suryast, and they were actually granted the copyright. So in India, the copyright has been granted here. When there were protests from other people, the Copyright Office sent a notice, but the status quo still remains. Even today, the Suryast copyright or the art has been given a copyright. It still exists for this artificial intelligence app and the person who was behind this app. Now, what are the countries doing about it? What is it that we are thinking about it? So, countries around the world are worried about where AI can go. In fact, in today's newspaper, there is an article about an AI summit that is held in UK. We'll discuss about that. In India also, we have been worried about how we need to regulate AI. In July 2021, there was a report on the by the Parliamentary Standing Committee on Commerce. The report's title was Review of Intellectual Property Rights Regime in India. They had suggested that we should incorporate emerging technologies of AI invention into their ambit. Means our parliamentary report seems to be in favor of allowing copyrights to be given to the work produced by these AI so that we can have better creations, we can have better use of this AI in our society. The flip side is the people who don't support this are mainly artists, authors, etc. So people who are in the creative field, artists who create the art, authors who write the books, there is no incentive left for them because the way that they earn is by writing their book so that it's published under their name, they get royalty over it. But now if you allow any machine to just learn artificially and create the art or book on their own, you are leaving no scope for any kind of incentive to be given to these authors and to the other kind of creative people who might be interested in working in this field. Now, it's also important to have a very quick look at what India's national IPR policy is. IPR is Intellectual Property Rights Policy is. So this policy is prepared by the Department for Promotion of Industry and Internal Trade. This policy came up in 2016 and the goal of the policy was stated as Creative India, Innovative India. Now, again, under this policy, there is no mention of AI. Under this policy, there is no mention of AI. And this is the challenging part. Because AI has now become a reality, it means that we need to accommodate that into our policies. Would we allow these kind of artworks to get patent, to get copyright, even if they are produced by AI platforms or not? The National IPR policy has these objectives listed: increase awareness about intellectual property rights, making sure that we have a proper legislative legal framework, if someone's copyright is being violated, what options do they have? There should be a proper setup for that. It also talks about modernizing and strengthening our IPR administration, commercializing the IPRs through meaning that if someone, let's say, wants to buy copyright, wants to buy the patent of a certain work, there should be a proper platform for that. There should be a proper adjudication mechanism in place, and there should be proper skill development to teach the people more about IP, how does it work, encouraging people to create more intellectual property rights related properties. Apart from this, if you talk about relationship between intellectual property and artificial intelligence, again this is a gray area because our copyright laws do not safeguard any creation that is generated by AI. Means right now the laws that we have in India, be it the Indian Copyright Act of 1957 or the Patents Act of 1970, they do not have any specific mention about AI or AI created art. The only example that we can take are, as I said, from the US Supreme Court and from the Indian Copyright Office of the act of them granting patent to an AI app produced art. So whether or not the government makes changes in the future remains to be seen, but from where we stand today, we do not have any AI related law in India that grants or bars copyright from being granted to such artwork. Time now for the third article for the day. The third article that we have here is about the U.S. Israel relationship. Why is it that it's so close? Why is it that US always comes to help Israel no matter what? Why is it that the US has used its veto power for favoring Israel multiple times? Why is it that US has opened up its purse, its military power to Israel time and time again? What is the origin story of this relationship? Now, if you look at the origin story of Israel, which we have discussed multiple times in the past month or so, ever since that devastating terrorist attack happened, we have discussed a lot about the creation of Israel, how Israel came into being. The center point of that story is something called the Balfour Declaration. The Balfour Declaration, as you know, by the UK, which said that yes, UK promises a specific state for the Jewish community. This led to the creation of Israel. The Balfour Declaration by the UK was supported by the US as well. In fact, US was the first country to recognize Israel as an independent country in 1948. But to say that the two sides have always had great relationship is not true. There have been many hiccups in between these two. For example, US was unhappy when Israel, Britain and France together launched the Suez War because they wanted to take control of the Suez Canal in Egypt. They wanted to make sure that that important trade route is open for them. US was unhappy. They did not want Israel's participation in this war. In fact, in the 1960s, the US also said to Israel that your nuclear program can be a danger for this part of the world and you should stop it. Situation, however, changed after the 1967 war. Why? 1967, Israel fought a war against Jordan, Syria and Egypt. It is famously called as a 6-day war. Israel won the war. In fact, Israel captured a lot of territory from Syria, from Egypt, etc. This led to a change in the relationship between Israel and US. Why? Number one, US did not come for Israel's help. US was busy in Vietnam itself. They did not come for Israel's help. But Israel defeated these countries. Amongst the countries that were defeated, the two interesting countries were Egypt and Syria. Why? Because they were the allies of USSR. This was an era of the Cold War where USSR and US were the two big superpowers. Both of them were not fighting front on head to head, but they wanted to damage the reputation of each other. So when the US saw Israel is capable of defeating Egypt and Syria single-handedly, who were Soviet allies, this is what led to a change in how the US saw Israel. From then on, US thought that Israel can be a very, very helpful and stable ally in this part of the world. In West Asia, that is Middle East, where USSR is trying to expand their influence, US wanted a country on their own so that they can trust the country, and Israel was turning out to be that country. Since then, the relationship has become stronger every single year. There are multiple examples to prove that. Israel has received $158 billion in aid from the US since the Second World War has ended. Israel gets about $3.8 billion in military aid every single year from the US, which is about 16% of Israel's total military budget. Israel's largest trading partner is the US, with the trade being $50 billion now. Again, $50 billion might not seem like a lot of trade right now if you look at from India's point of view, but in context, just understand the context of it. The population of Israel is close to 1 crore. And now imagine the trade. It's close to 1 crore population. India's population touching 140 crore. India's, let's say, highest trade is with China, $138 billion last year. So a country that has only about 1 crore of population, and for them to have a $50 billion trade is actually very, very, very big. Israel's very famous missile defense shield called as the Iron Dome, which protects a lot of rockets from Hamas and from Hezbollah to fall or from falling into Israel, that also has been developed with the help of the US and is financed in part by the US only. Since 1972, US has used its veto power over 50 times against any resolution that has been introduced against Israel in the UN Security Council. Even right now, the UN General Assembly resolution where India abstained from voting, US was one of the few countries that voted against it, means voted in favor of Israel. Not just this, Donald Trump, the American president, recognized Jerusalem as Israel's capital and moved America's embassy to the disputed city. So just to give you a context, internationally it is recognized, accepted that Jerusalem is a disputed city. So nations around the world have decided not to set up their embassies in Jerusalem, including India. Our embassy in Israel is in Tel Aviv. So most countries set up their embassies in Tel Aviv, not in Jerusalem, while Israel wants the world to recognize Jerusalem only as their capital and to set up their embassies there. But nations don't do that. They recognize Jerusalem as still a disputed city. But US did recognize Jerusalem as their capital and in fact moved their embassy there under Donald Trump. So again, example of how close the US and Israel have been. But does it mean that there have never been any hiccups? Not really. There have been hiccups. Different American presidents from time to time have criticized Israel on different issues. For example, 1970s, the US president pressurized Israel to have a peace agreement with Egypt to give back the territory that they have occupied from Egypt. George W. Bush also pressurized Israel not to go ahead and settle more people in West Bank. Barack Obama very recently criticized Benjamin Netanyahu when Benjamin Netanyahu was speaking against Israel, speaking against Iran's nuclear deal time and time again. Barack Obama said that Benjamin Netanyahu should not oppose this deal. The current Biden administration also has criticized Netanyahu's government when Netanyahu specifically tried to overturn the judiciary, the appointment of the judiciary. As you know, in Israel, from the past few months, the Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has been trying to change the manner of appointment of judges in the Supreme Court. The appointment of judges is handled by a committee. Netanyahu wants that in this committee, government should have a majority representation so that no decision can be taken against him personally. This also has been criticized by the American president. So on and off, there have been multiple instances of the two sides not seeing eye to eye, but that has not stopped the American government from supporting Israel in the UN no matter what. Even in the middle of all of these, even when Barack Obama criticized Netanyahu multiple times, Barack Obama was the one that used his veto power multiple times in the UN in favor of Israel. He was the one who gave a lot of aid to Israel time and time again. So despite all these tensions coming in, we have never seen the US leaving the side of Israel. Now, the question is why? First answer we gave a few minutes back. The US sees Israel as one of the most dependable allies in this area, that is the Middle East or West Asia, where they have a lot of strategic importance. Similarly, the US has formed similar relationship with countries such as Japan, South Korea, Germany, where they have virtually given a guarantee of safety to these countries. For example, Japan does not develop its own nuclear weapons because they know that Americans will help them whenever they want. The other angle is of the Jewish community in the US. The Jewish community in US is extremely powerful. They donate a lot of money to the political parties, both the main political parties in fact. Democrats and the Republicans, both of them get considerable amount of donation from the Jewish community, which is extremely wealthy. The Jewish community obviously is pro-Israel, and thus they also lobby the government for making policies that support Israel no matter what. This is why we see the US supporting the Israel under any circumstance whatever. There are facts to prove how despite different presidents coming in from different parties, the help to Israel has not changed. For example, George Bush was from Republican Party, Obama Democrat, Clinton again Democrat, but again the funding has increased year on year. Similarly, as you can see here, a lot of different weapon systems from Israel, which Israel is famous for, has been developed with the help of the US. Look at the Iron Dome, the famous Iron Dome that Israel uses to protect from the rockets coming in. US spent $1.35 billion on that. Then David Sling, which is a medium short range system that also had US spending over $1 billion. Similar anti-missile systems in Israel have been developed with the help and the cost of US for many years. So the relationship between the two sides goes back to many decades, and in fact it still stays strong going forward. Now let's move on to some news stories from the prelims exam point of view. The first one, the UPSC has tightened the norms for the appointment of the state police chiefs. Now what exactly is this issue? So the head of the police in a state is the DGP, Director General of Police, or DGP. Whoever is the state DGP, he or she would be the head of the police system in that state. A few years back, the Supreme Court had said that there should be a proper method of appointing the DGP. What was the method the Supreme Court had appointed earlier? Let me tell you that. So basically, Supreme Court had said that the state governments will give some names to the UPSC. The UPSC then will do a background check, will do the eligibility criteria check, and the UPSC will shortlist 3 names. These 3 names again will be given to the state government. The state government now will appoint the DGP from these 3 names only. That is the current process in place. This is called the empanelment process. That the state government will send some names to the UPSC. Out of those names, the UPSC will choose 3. Out of these 3, then the state government can decide whoever they want. Now the problem, what is happening here is many state governments don't like this. See, police is under the state. So the police head, as per the state government, should be the person who is closer to them. Different political parties prefer different types of people who are heading the police. So the process of appointing the DGP has been under discussion because the states don't want interference from the UPSC. They want that they should be allowed to appoint whoever they want. Now this again has made or has created a lot of controversy. Why? The Supreme Court had said that the DGP should be given a 2 years tenure at least. But many state governments have appointed DGPs who have 2 to 3 months only to retire. They choose DGP for such a short tenure so that they can retire, and then in the next time they can choose a DGP of their own choice. This also has some issues, and we have seen this in multiple states. Now what has happened, UPSC has said a few things. Number one, only those police officers which have at least 6 months of service left before the retirement should be considered for the DGP position, number one. Second, if the Union Home Ministry says that this officer who is being discussed is in the central service right now, it's on central deputation, and it will not be possible to relieve that officer, he or she should not be considered for the DGP post. Because what happens in many cases, let's say a state government, let's say state government of Madhya Pradesh, they want a certain officer to become their DGP. That officer is right now working under the central government. Central government says, or Home Ministry says, no, we cannot give this officer to you. The officer is doing an important job at the central government level. That again that pushes the process to no end, and you have to start the process again. So this again is the second criteria. First was at least 6 months should be remaining in your tenure. Second, if the officer is on central deputation, first ask the Home Ministry whether you are ready to relieve that officer. If yes, only then have discussion. Third guideline, minimum experience required was earlier 30 years, now it is 25 years. So again, number one, let me reiterate, minimum 6 months tenure should be remaining before retirement. Second, if the officer is on central deputation, ask the Ministry of Home Affairs whether they are ready to relieve that officer or not. And third, minimum experience has to be 25 years. Earlier it used to be 30 years. Now it can be 25 years. Now, many state governments are not happy with the UPSC interference. The state governments want to appoint officers of their choice. So what have the state governments done? State governments are extremely intelligent. They find loopholes. So what many state governments do is they don't appoint DGP only. They say, oh, UPSC will appoint a DGP, no issues, we will not even have a DGP. In the place of DGP, we will have acting DGP. There is no rule about acting DGP, who will be the acting DGP or not. So rather than going to the UPSC, giving them the name, then waiting for 3 names to come back to appoint the DGP, let's just bypass regular DGP, we will only appoint acting DGP. In fact, many states have done that. For example, UP, Punjab, Andhra Pradesh, Telangana, all have appointed in charge DGPs, means not full DGPs. They have given different names, that he is an in charge DGP or he is an acting DGP only. That again has brought to light this question or whether the states are bypassing this. Now, the interesting part is look at the names of the state. It's not only those states that are run by the opposition parties. Look at Uttar Pradesh. Uttar Pradesh is run by the same party which is ruling the center government. So it's not only the opposition parties that have this problem. Punjab, for example, was in the news recently. Punjab government passed a law to change the appointment method for the DGP. Punjab government recently, just a few months back, they passed a law saying that we want to appoint DGP on our own. But this law has not been given assent by their governor so far. They sent it to the governor has still not given assent. So whether it is allowed, whether Punjab is allowed to change the process or not, obviously Punjab is allowed to change the process. Every other state will do the same because everyone wants freedom. So it depends whether Punjab will be able to change the process or not. All this new process of empanelment through the UPSC, it is after the Supreme Court judgment. The Supreme Court has given this famous judgment in Prakash Singh case, which is famous for the police reforms. This is the process. The committee that the UPSC will form to shortlist the 3 officers will be headed by UPSC chairman. It will have Union Home Secretary, the Chief Secretary of that state and the current DGP. Apart from that, one of the heads of Central Armed Police Force will be nominated by the Home Ministry, who is not from that state. This committee will shortlist 3 members or 3 people, and they will then give it to the state government, who can appoint the DGP of their choice. This process was after the Supreme Court had intervened, but again, as I said, the states do not like this. The Supreme Court has said that the states should not appoint DGP on acting basis. The DGP should be given a tenure of at least 2 years. Even if the DGP is coming to a retirement, an extension should be given to him or her. But the states do not obviously like this. The states think that no, we have to make a new process so that DGPs can be appointed through our choice. These are the other directives that the Supreme Court had given in the Prakash Singh case. Mr. Prakash Singh himself was a retired DGP. He filed a case in the Supreme Court about police reforms. Police reforms are again a matter of big concern in India. Whenever you talk about police reforms, you have to mention about the Prakash Singh case. This is where the Supreme Court had given all these judgments. how to improve the working of the police, giving 2-year tenure to the DGP, 2-year tenure for superintendents and the SHOs, etc., having different investigative and law and order functions, have different specialization, different training for the police officers, etc. The next article is about a new type of coffee that is brewing in Kerala, that is the mushroom coffee. Those of you who are fond of coffee, those of you who consume a lot of coffee, you know coffee has some health deterrents as well. There are some issues that consuming a lot of coffee, a lot of caffeine might have on you. So for them, the good thing is that it's a new brand of coffee, a new type of coffee under which 25 to 30% of the coffee powder will actually be replaced, and it will be mushrooms of some kind that will be powdered and they will be used in the coffee form. This is the new type of mushroom coffee brand that has come up. In Kerala, the famous brand now is Le Bay. This is the name that is given to this brand that's becoming famous in Kerala. It is originated with the support of Krishi Vigyan Kendra. The village where this coffee plantation or this mushroom plantation mainly is taking place is the Thalavur Panchayat. They have now come up with Koon Gramam, which is a project to improve mushroom cultivation, because this will now be used for making coffee. Which are these 5 mushrooms which they have decided to cultivate more? Button mushroom, oyster, milky, lion's mane and turkey tail. Please remember, all these are varieties of mushroom. This question can be asked. These 4 or 5 names can be given to you and you may be asked what exactly are these. So these are mushroom varieties. A cup of mushroom coffee would contain about half the amount of caffeine than the regular cup of coffee. So the entire idea is to reduce the amount of caffeine, which has a negative impact on your nervous system. Mushroom coffee is not an invention of India. Please understand it. It's an old invention. It goes back to the World War II era, where coffee became one of the few things that suffered from shortages in Europe. So as an alternate, because coffee production was not that high, mushroom powder was used as an alternate. It turned out to be very, very good. It was introduced first in Finland, where people brewed and consumed shaga mushroom coffee, and then different parts of the world saw similar kind of a tradition picking up, and in India also it's picking up now to a large extent. The next article is that the WHO regional elections are now over. The regional director of the WHO for the Southeast Asia region had to be elected. We discussed this earlier. The competition was between Bangladesh and Nepal, with each of the countries having a candidate. The Bangladesh candidate has won. That is Saima Wazir. She is the daughter of Sheikh Hasina, that is the Prime Minister of Bangladesh. India gave the support to the Bangladesh candidate only. Now, we have discussed this earlier as well. It became a serious concern because these two neighbors, Nepal and Bangladesh, both of these are on good terms with India, and India tries hard to maintain good relationship with both of them. So choosing one of these was an important decision, a tough decision for the government, but the government chose to go ahead and support the candidate from Bangladesh, because this is where we see more important partnership coming up in the future. She defeated Shambhu Acharya, who was a candidate from Nepal, who has been working in the field of public health for a long, long time. Now, this region, the Southeast Asia region, has about 11 countries in total. I told you earlier as well. Bhutan, Bangladesh, North Korea, India, Indonesia, Maldives, Nepal, Sri Lanka, Thailand and Timor-Leste. These are the 10, and the 11th one is Myanmar. Myanmar did not take part in the vote. The current regional director of this region is Poonam Khetrapal Singh, a former IAS officer from India. She will hold this post till Feb 1. On Feb 1, we will have a new regional director coming up. Now, WHO has different regions in place. All these regions are headed by individual regional directors. There is the African region, region of the Americas, Southeast Asia, this is where India is a part. Then there is European region, there is the Eastern Mediterranean region, and there is the Western Pacific region. Now, WHO has always been a very, very, very important body for the world. However, ever since the COVID-19 crisis hit, it has become even more prominent, even more important. These are some of the core functions of what the WHO does. It provides leadership It gives guidelines to the nations around the world how to deal with emerging threats in the field of health. It undertakes a lot of research, gives information, knowledge to the governments how to be prepared for the future issues. It makes standards for monitoring any specific disease. The problem is, despite all of these, the WHO's prestige took a major hit in the COVID-19 crisis, because when the COVID-19 crisis first started, WHO did not take it seriously. They first said that human-to-human transmission is not possible. Then they said that no, it's not a pandemic, nothing wrong is happening. It came into a lot of criticism also, because it seemed like China was influencing the decisions of the WHO. So all these things have hit the prestige of WHO very, very hard. It will take a long time for WHO to recover that prestige and become a body that everyone looks up to around the world. It makes policy, it articulates evidence-based studies, it shares that with the governments across the world, gives technical support, and also monitors any health-related issues around the entire world. The next story is about how two Indian cities, Kozhikode and Gwalior, are amongst 55 new cities that have been given a place in UNESCO Creative Cities Network. So this is a list that is maintained by UNESCO. It has about 300 cities now, close to 300. These are the cities which have a strong commitment to preserving their own culture, creativity, despite all the urban planning. So there are a lot of cities in India, for example, where you will go. For example, if you take example of cities in especially Madhya Pradesh, Rajasthan, where there were old forts, etc. Many of these cities where you go to, you will see it has a vibe of a very ancient city, where they have preserved their architecture, they have preserved their forts, etc. Around that, they have obviously built modern things. They have built malls, they have built flyovers, they have built all the human development, settlement, etc. These are the cities that are chosen to be in this list, that they are preserving their old heritage culture and they are also undertaking development. So from this year, Gwalior and Kozhikode have been given a mention in this list from India. There are different categories under which they are given the name, or they are given a place in this list. For example, Gwalior has been covered under the music category, while Kozhikode has been given a mention in the literature category. Then there are other cities as well around the world that have been given a place here in this year as well. Now, this is not the first time that Indian cities have been listed here. In fact, let me give this to you as your homework. Do tell me in the comment section which are the Indian cities that are already a part of this list. Also, which was the first Indian city to become a part of this creative cities list. In total, there are 7 fields or 7 categories in which the cities are chosen. First, craft and folk art. Second, design. Third, film. Fourth, gastronomy, that means food, etc. Fifth, literature. Then 6th, media arts, and 7th is music. These are the categories under which the cities are given a name in this list, or place in this UNESCO Creative Cities list. This list was started in 2004 first, to recognize how these cities have been able to preserve their ancient culture, their heritage. It's also a way for the world to achieve Sustainable Development Goal number 11, that talks about establishing sustainable cities and communities. So do remember this as your homework. You have to find out which are the Indian cities that are already in this list and which was the first one specifically to enter here. The next news is about a new award, that is a British Academy Book Prize that is given to Indian-born author Nandini Das. It's a prestigious award that is given to works which are in the non-fiction category especially. Non-fiction means it's a factual story, it talks about certain stories from the past. This year's prize has been given to her book. The book's name is Courting India, England, Mughal India and the Origins of the Empire. She is a professor in of English at the University of Oxford. The book mainly is written from the point of view of the first English ambassador to India, Sir Thomas Roe, in the early 17th century. I'm sure all of you would have read about Thomas Roe in your modern history classes or medieval history classes. This is where her book has been written from the point of view of the English ambassador when he came to India. What did he see? How it laid to the laying down of the foundation of the British Empire that stayed in India for multiple centuries going forward. The British Academy Book Prize was earlier known by a different name, Naif Al-Rodhan Prize, established in 2013. Again, remember, it celebrates work in non-fiction. Non-fiction means when you write about facts. Also, a bit of information about Sir Thomas Roe, since he is a centerpiece of this book. Remember, Sir Thomas Roe was sent to India by the British monarch in September 1650. Now, he was obviously not the first person from the British to come to India. In fact, before him, William Hawkins had come to India to meet Jahangir in 1608. But Jahangir was under the Portuguese influence. He did not really give any audience to him because William Hawkins was not able to establish any successful contact between the British and the Mughal Empire. Sir Thomas Roe was sent then. He was sent as the ambassador of the English King James I to the court of Jahangir. He was the one who bought a lot of expensive rare gifts from Europe. He was able to establish a repo here. And after that, he stayed in India from 1615 to 1618. To remember the name of his journal that he wrote, it was called the Journal of the Mission to the Mughal Empire. It talks about India of the 17th century, how 17th century India was a very flourishing civilization where the entire world got attracted to take a part with India's trade and establish relationship with India. The last news of the day is about an AI summit that is being hosted by the UK, inviting leaders from around the world to have a global understanding of what kind of regulations should we have in place. The interesting part about this was this summit was held at a place called the Bletchley Park. Now, Bletchley Park is a very, very, very interesting place. It's about 1 hour from London. This place became very, very famous during the Second World War. So in the Second World War, the fight was mainly about, can one country intercept the messages of the other country? The Germans had a very advanced technology of encrypting their messages. Germans had made a very, very advanced machine called the Enigma. Enigma was a machine that was considered to be unbreachable. No one can read the messages. But what the British did was, with the help of scientists, researchers, they made a place, a secretive place called the Bletchley Park, where they were able to decode Enigma with the help of scientists such as Alan Turing. They were the ones who broke the Enigma code of the Nazis, and the British and the Allies were able to get information about what Nazis or the Germans were communicating with each other. This is why the Bletchley Park place is famous. You can in fact go there. It's a very famous place where all these machines are still preserved. It's kind of a museum where you can actually take a tour. So at this place in Bletchley Park, this summit is being held. This has led to the world's first ever AI declaration called the Bletchley Declaration. The Bletchley Declaration talks about the need to regulate AI for our safety and to use the opportunities going forward. From around the world, there were leaders invited. Not the Prime Minister, President, they did not go, but second in command, third in command, these ministers, etc. went to participate from different countries. This Bletchley Declaration has been supported by 28 countries and European Union, including India. India has also been a part of it. This declaration talks about being transparent and accountable, that no country should use AI for harmful activities. No country should develop AI in such a form that it comes to harm us in the long run. It talks about identifying the risk and having a shared understanding of how AI should be used going forward around the world. That brings us to the end of today's discussion. Here are a couple of practice questions. The first is on artificial intelligence and the second one on the rights of the unborn child. Make sure you try and answer these questions on our student answer writing portal. Read each other's answer as well to learn from each other's mistake. Again, reminding you, 5th of November is when we have a national scholarship test. You all have to appear for it. This gives you a chance to up to 90% scholarship. Register using the link given in the description of the video and appear for the test. Thank you so much. Join us tomorrow at 10 a.m. once again. Have a good day ahead. Bye-bye. Jai Hind.